Welcome to the Redhead Reveal podcast, where we reveal what it means to truly connect. I'm Jenn Pinkerton, your Redhead host. I'm a psychotherapist, high-performance coach, sexologist, writer, and speaker. As a connection expert, I help people transform by exploring the root causes and beliefs and behaviors that hold them back. Let's talk about living a life where you thrive. I'm excited today to give you some Redhead recommendations. And for those of you who are not familiar with what this is, people email quite often with suggestions and questions for topics. The email address is info@redheadreveal.com. If you want to give us a topic that you'd like for me to discuss when we do this, I guess about every month or so, I do a Redhead Recommendations episode. So today I've got some really good questions. I'm just going to start. The first one I'm asked about today is, I found out my husband was talking to another woman for months. He swears it never got physical, but it still feels like cheating to me. He wants to move forward, but I cannot stop replaying it in my head. I'm scared I'll never feel the same towards him again. How do you even begin to trust someone after they've crossed a line like that? You know, these kind of questions are always challenging around infidelity because everybody has a right to feel the way they feel. And regardless of whether there was actual physical intimacy or not, you feel as though you're betrayed. And when we feel betrayed, there has to be some sort of repair for that. There has to be some sort of acknowledgement and some sort of slowing down to sit with those feelings and to be able to work together on how can you repair that? How can you reestablish trust? How are you showing adequate remorse? How transparent are you about things? And is there an exploration of the feelings to understand why it happened in the first place? Because many affairs do begin with unmet needs that are handled in an inappropriate way, rather than talking to your partner about those needs. If that might be applicable here, it's worth exploring. If perhaps your husband states it was another reason, then what was it? Was it opportunity? Was it ego? Was it personality disorder? Was it sex addiction? Was it desire mismatch? You know, there's a myriad of different reasons that people cheat, but understanding that and exploring that with your partner and really having some open-mindedness and some vulnerability allows for connection even during such big conflict. This allows for you guys to understand what was missing, how can we both shift, and then how can your partner give you an adequate sense of repair and remorse and accountability and transparency. So then the two of you can work together to create a plan going forward, while you still feel as though your needs are acknowledged and that feeling of betrayal basically is met. Because betrayal trauma is a very real thing. And the only way to address that is by slowing down enough to hold space for that, to have your partner be able to sit with your feelings, to talk about it, to go through how that made you feel, and provide some sort of sense of ownership about that. And that repair is going to be the single most important thing to happen from this, so that hopefully you guys can grow together and beyond from this situation. All right, the next question is, my partner and I opened up our relationship after a few years together. It started out as just fun, but now feelings are involved and I'm struggling. I want to trust him, but it's harder than I thought it would be. We said we communicate, but sometimes it feels like I'm left out of what's really going on. How do couples make open relationships work without losing trust? Open relationships can also be really challenging if you don't have a finite set of rules and structure around it. I'm really big on working with couples who have contracts or agreements about this. It requires you sitting down and saying, we're going to treat this in the most special, fragile, delicate way we can because we honor and respect our relationship, that we want to talk about what are your fears? What are your goals? What are your needs? How can you see this working? How can you see it not working? And you actually treat it like a meeting. You're going to write down these things and you're going to share this with each other. So you can create some sort of agreement that says, okay, I commit to doing X and not Y, or I commit to communicating this way, or the person in this open relationship is someone we do know or someone we don't know, or this can't cross over into our family or personal life, or it can. There's not a right or wrong when you're exploring an alternative relationship or open relationship, but what is important is that you're both on the same page. And oftentimes, like in this text, when your feelings involve, you're struggling, it's because things are not being said. We've got to say what we mean and mean what we say. So it's not that it might not work, but it sounds to me that it's not going to work because you guys haven't talked about it in the way you need to be talking about it. So I highly suggest a really open and honest and transparent conversation happen between the two of you. So you really both highlight what are we getting out of this and what are we not, and be able to meet each other's needs as well. I hope that helps. Okay, and the next one is my girlfriend and I decided to try being polyamorous. So here's another poly kind of question. She's gone on a few dates and I said I was okay with it, but I actually feel sick every time she mentions another person. I don't know if that's normal jealousy or if I'm not cut out for this. How do you know if polyamory is something you can actually handle emotionally? Okay, well, right now I can tell you you're not ready to handle this emotionally. If you are feeling these feelings about truly being physically sick, that's your body highlighting for you that I feel danger. I do not feel safe with this. I do not feel comfortable with this. And your body's actually having a somatic response to that fear. It's like the danger signals are firing off in your nervous system. And that requires this conversation. You need to be able to tell her you're not ready for that. Or maybe you would be later at another point if you had a better understanding about what the structure is going to be. If y'all could address all your fears, if y'all could work through that. But to move forward with it when you feel sick is not something I would at all recommend. I think you need to stop immediately and revisit the structure of this, if any, and revisit the goals and thoughts and fears and feelings around it. And both of you be on the same page. Because truly, if one of you is not ready for that, you have a right to set a boundary and say, that's not something I want to do in my relationship. It's all about everybody feeling as though they have a voice and they're feeling heard. And definitely, it's not going to include feeling sick about it. Okay, the next one is every time my boyfriend and I argue, I completely lose it. I yell, I cry, I say things I don't mean. And afterward, I feel awful. He shuts down and I end up feeling like the crazy one. I honestly don't know why I can't stay calm when we fight. How do I stop myself from blowing up during arguments before I ruin the relationship? Well, this, my friend, is dysregulation. This is also nervous system work. This is your body feeling highly activated, highly threatened. Your emotional safety is threatened in that moment. And you are going into a situation of fight, probably, where you are yelling, crying, saying things you don't mean. Your body's screaming, I don't feel safe here, so I'm going to lash out and trying to establish some safety. And the problem with this is that your message is getting lost in your delivery. So whatever feelings you have about the argument or the reason there's conflict is getting missed, because then you're just coming off as the crazy one, as you're saying, and he's not able to hear you. Also, when you're this dysregulated, you are in the upper part of your brain, the part of your brain that's not capable of logical and operational thought. It's purely emotionally driven, and it's not going to get you usually the results that you're desiring out of the feelings, whatever the feelings are happening in the conflict in general. Also, I see a cycle here when you're mentioning that he shuts down. So he might actually be going into his own sense of freeze or flight because this has activated him with you guys being in a very dysregulated state. So then with his withdrawal, that can actually cause further problems. That can create feelings of abandonment. That emotional shutdown can make you feel like you're not being heard. So there's a lot of different dynamics going on in this conversation that I think are problematic. But I think all of them could be greatly enhanced and greatly resolved by understanding your nervous system, by working on power in the pause, by slowing down to be able to express how you feel in an emotionally regulated way, and for each of you to be able to hear each other. Looking at some of the power rules, which I've talked about in prior episodes, things that are really an approach to fighting fair and conflict, where we're not going to have put downs. We're going to be accountable and take ownership for our behaviors. We're not going to withdraw or shut down. We're going to stay emotionally regulated, and we're not going to ridicule or have contempt for a partner. If you work on some of that structure, that might be able to really change the output and the outcome of this type of conflict. But being emotionally regulated is going to be something you're going to have to work on your own, and getting more comfortable in your body to be able to understand the cues when you're being activated, the cues when you are not in the lower part of your brain, so you can do some grounding techniques to regulate yourself, whether that's breath work, whether it's tapping, journaling, shaking, grounding with the earth. There's so many different things that you can do that can help you reset. And sometimes it just looks like telling your partner, I'm really flooded with emotion right now. I need to go take, 20 minutes to calm down. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to submerge my hands in ice. I'm going to tap. I'm going to breathe. And then I want to come back to you and pick up this conversation where we left off. That's a very mature way to approach it. And I assure you, you're going to be heard a lot better than if you're yelling and screaming. All right, the next question is, every time I get in a relationship, I kind of forget who I am. I stop hanging out with friends, I stop doing things I love, and I focus on them. When things fall apart, I feel like I have to start over completely. How do I stop losing myself every time I fall in love? Well, my question to you would be, who are you? You're saying I kind of forget who I am. Well, who are you? Understanding that definition, really exploring your own sense of self-worth, your own identity building, figuring out who you are, what you like, what you want to be and do is really imperative. So then you can show up in a very secure state and secure attachment with a partner. This losing yourself and only focusing on them kind of suggests to me maybe an anxious attachment, but at the most, but also at the least, it might just suggest a low sense of self-worth. We can't shift or adjust or accommodate who we are for somebody else. That's not being authentic, and that will catch up with you. You'll feel as though you're wearing a mask and you're not going to be showing your true self. And it's not going to feel good, and that probably is the demise of these relationships. The more real you are with people, the more confident you are in who you are and what you bring to the table, the better you're going to be, because you're also going to attract different partners as well. But I think that I would explore some identity building here. I would explore some self-worth, and I would make certain that you know exactly who you are for the next time you meet someone, and that's who you're showing them you are. Okay, next one is, my boyfriend never talks about his feelings. If I bring up anything serious, he just says, I don't know, or changes the subject. I feel like I'm the only one trying to make us closer. He says he loves me, but I can't feel it. What do you do when your partner just won't open up emotionally? You know, emotional unavailability, it comes from somewhere. And oftentimes it's a growing up sense in their attachment about not feeling though it was safe to express feelings. So I'm not sure if that pertains to your boyfriend, but he might have not been very comfortable with his feelings in life. He may not have had that messaging growing up from his parents or caregivers that it was safe to talk about it. He might have some more sense of maybe from a male perspective that that's not normal, or he shouldn't be doing that. You know, we don't know what messaging he brings to the table. And I would implore you to ask that. I would talk to him about, hey, when did you first learn maybe that it wasn't safe to talk about your feelings? Because I want to be your safe place. I want to be the person that you come to with everything. I want you to trust in my love for you and trust in my respect for you and know that you're safe with me. You can share with me what you're feeling and we can talk about it together. Providing that platform for him, that ability to feel like he is emotionally safe, might really transform his confidence in being able to talk to you. Also, being able to maybe explain that this does bring you closer, that you are craving connection, that understanding his deeper feelings on a deeper level actually ties you to him in a stronger way, that does build your bond. But sometimes partners who are not used to doing that don't understand that concept. So it might be a little bit of psychoeducation almost to be able to explain, like, whenever you share with me in a vulnerable and raw way, I feel really connected to you. And it makes me feel like this is something special in our relationship, that I know how you feel on a deeper level than the person sitting right next to us does, or your friend or neighbor. To feel as though we're creating something between us, and I know your feelings on a deeper level, you know mine, and we're establishing a very special connection and trust. I think it takes practice. And I think it takes explaining this so that you're providing that comfort for him. And then if he still can't do that, he might need to do some of his own work to explore, what are those limitations about? What does that say to him? You know, this is a growth opportunity for him. And can he look at it in that way? But I certainly think that's something that people can overcome. It just takes a little bit of self-reflection, self-awareness, and willingness to grow. Okay, let's see. The next one is, I feel like I'm the only one keeping our relationship alive. I'm always the one planning things or trying to fix problems. When I bring it up, he says I'm too sensitive or that I care too much. Maybe I do, but I don't want to feel alone in a relationship. How do you know when you're putting in more effort than your partner? And when is it time to stop trying? Well, I got to tell you, hearing you're too sensitive or you care too much kind of makes me feel like it's time to stop trying. But without more context, I don't want to jump to that. But I would say that this doesn't seem equally balanced when I read this. And you know, if somebody thinks you're too much, maybe they need to go find less. I think that we need to feel confident and secure about who we are and what we bring to the table. And if that doesn't work for someone, well, maybe you're not right for each other. But I don't think that means you're too sensitive or too much. Now, it could be that maybe your attachment style is overly anxious and maybe you're putting that out there, which I don't know. I don't have more context from reading this. And maybe that's worth some self-reflection. But I think that y'all should explore some of that. You should talk about what is too much, what is not enough. Is this a common thing that whenever you talk about your feelings, you're given the too sensitive thing? Is there ever a time where he holds space for you and establishes emotional safety for you to talk and share? Or was this an isolated incident? Or was it when he felt like, maybe it's constant conversation about things that are heavy? Is this maybe your need for reassurance on a constant level? I don't know enough with this to know kind of which way to go. But I would certainly say that the answer either way is to talk about it. You've got to say what you mean and mean what you say. So I want you to be able to go back to your partner to say, look, I first want buy-in. Can we have a conversation? Is this a good time for you? And then once you've established that, to be able to be honest and say, hey, I feel like that I'm keeping our relationship alive. I want to talk about things. I want to address things. And when you tell me or give me feedback that I care too much, I'm too sensitive, it feels really dismissive and invalidating. And I don't know what to do with that. What are your thoughts about that? And to try to open up conversation, because it's possible he didn't mean it in that way and he just wasn't comfortable talking. Or it's also possible he meant it in exactly that way. So I think that that's worth exploring. And then I would love for you to do your own self-reflection, which is, how am I showing up in this relationship? How do I feel about myself? Am I confident? Am I knowing what my own boundaries are? So I think there's some work on both sides here to explore that deeper, which might give you both some answers. Okay, here's the last question of the day. I say yes to everything my husband wants, even when I don't want to. I hate fighting, so I just go along with things. But lately I've started to feel angry and tired all the time. I think he has no idea how much I'm holding in. How do I start speaking up for myself without everything turning into an argument? Okay, first of all, so what if it turns into an argument? You need to be able to share how you feel. You need to be able to talk about it. This I hate fighting part, is it that the conflict is unhealthy? So you hate being able to talk about how you feel? And this resentment of feeling anger is coming from not feeling heard. I mean, it's a fundamental need for all of us to feel seen and heard. So I think that being able to sit down with your husband and talk about things, to be able to say, I feel like I'm betraying myself. I'm not setting boundaries about what works for me. I'm not speaking up about what works for me. And I want to be able to share that with you. Are you curious about it? Open up that dialogue. You might find you have a partner that would be willing to do things that you wanted to do, or would be more open-minded. But if you're not expressing yourself, how will he know? Also, if it's the opposite, where you are expressing it and there's just feedback that we're all not going to do that, well, that doesn't seem very balanced either. So is there some give and take in this relationship? And what do your boundaries look like? And what do his boundaries look like? But at the end of the day, this last question about how do I start speaking up for myself? Well, you just start now. Whether it's going to be an argument or not, you've got to be able to have your voice. You've got to feel heard. You've got to feel safe in a relationship to be able to share your feelings. Because if we can't share how we feel and we can't be vulnerable with our partner, we don't have a partnership at all. That's it for today. I would love to see your questions for next time. info@redheadedreal.com. Also, a lot of these are exploring connections. So I want to remind you all that I do have my new connection cards available on Amazon. There'll be a link in the bio also. And best and rest. See you soon.